They used to be best friends. Living in the same apartment, sharing everyday stories, until a small argument erupted into uncontrollable violence. Within minutes, blood was spilled, one person collapsed, and the other calmly called 911, calmly admitting to his actions. When the police arrived, they not only found a body slashed more than 40 times, but also faced a cold-blooded murderer. Why did he do this? Was this a case of self-defense, or was there a more horrifying truth hidden? Let me find out the truth behind this shocking case. That night, the police hotline suddenly rang. A call with no sign of panic or distress. The man on the end of the line simply said calmly, "I'm the one who called. I just killed a man." That sentence was enough to make anyone shudder. But what surprised the police the most was the caller's chilling calmness. No crying, no confusion, even a bit of indifference. When the police arrived at the scene, they saw a scene that no one could have prepared for. Christopher Swell lay on the floor, his body covered in blood, with deep cuts all over his body. But what shocked them the most, was that Christopher was still alive. Even though he was on the brink of death, he still tried to move slightly, as a last effort to cling to life. And right there, just a few steps away, David Hunter, the man who had just admitted his crime, stood still. No trembling, no fear, no sign that he had just committed a brutal murder. The police immediately restrained him, but no one could have guessed that David did not resist. He even appeared to cooperate, as if nothing was bothering him. So what happened? Was it a murder in a fit of rage, or was there something more terrifying? The answer awaits in the next part. Within minutes, the police were on the scene. But when they opened the door to the apartment, a horrifying scene appeared before their eyes. A man was lying in a pool of blood, his body covered in injuries. It was Christopher Swell. But what shocked the police more than anything, he was still alive. Despite being slashed more than 40 times, Christopher was still breathing faintly. The officers hurriedly shouted, "Chris! If you can hear me, try to move." But he could only move slightly, a desperate attempt to cling to life. The police rushed to try to save him, but within seconds, Christopher's last breath was gone. There was nothing they could do. They could only stare at each other in shock. And at that moment, David Hunter, the perpetrator of this tragedy, stood silently, showing no remorse. What had turned him into such a monster? Did he truly believe he was defending himself? David's testimony would reveal the truth, and it might be even more horrifying than we could imagine. At the police station, David Hunter sat down in his chair, his hands still cuffed. He did not appear to be panicking after killing someone. On the contrary, he even appeared relaxed. He looked around the interrogation room, then slowly leaned back in his chair. As the investigators sat down across from him, David smiled slightly. "I guess you guys have a lot of questions, right?" One investigator nodded, and began to ask him about what had happened. David recounted with a completely calm demeanor. According to him, Christopher had attacked first, and he had defended himself. He said that Christopher had choked him, leaving him no choice but to take out a machete to fight back. But the investigators were not fooled. If this was self-defense, why did David have enough time to run into the room, get the knife, and then come back to confront him? If he was really scared, why didn't he run away? Why didn't he call the police? And most importantly, if this was self-defense, why was Christopher slashed more than 40 times? One investigator stared at David, his voice stern. "Do you think you lost control?" David didn't think for long. He shrugged, replying in a cold tone. "No. I just did what needed to be done." That sentence made the room fall into a heavy silence. How would a person who was truly frightened, a person who was truly attacked, react? Certainly not with such a calm attitude. Perhaps, David did not kill in self-defense. Perhaps, he had planned this all along. The story was not over. And David's testimony contained an even more horrifying truth. In the interrogation room, the investigators began to realize something. David was lying. He claimed that Christopher had attacked first, but when pressed for details, his story became increasingly unbelievable. He said that Christopher had strangled him, causing him to run into the room in a panic. But then he said that he had turned around to confront Christopher. Wait. What would a truly frightened person do? Run away. Call the police. Find a way to escape. But David took out his weapon and attacked. The investigator crossed his arms, staring at him. You said you were defending yourself. But if that was the case, why did you slash him so many times? If you just wanted to escape danger, why didn't you stop after the first slash? David was silent. A moment passed, then he chuckled. I didn't want him to survive. That statement made the atmosphere in the room sink. There was no more excuse. This wasn't self-defense. This was premeditated murder. So what was his real motive? A momentary rage, or something else? Let me find out. David Hunter had stopped making excuses. He was no longer trying to pretend he was innocent. Instead, he began to recount everything with an unnerving calm. The investigator asked a simple question. Why did you do that? David smiled. He thought he could control me. He said that when he moved in with Christopher, he began to feel constrained. He said that Christopher wanted to control him, from his personal accounts, his living habits, to how he spent his money. He felt like a prisoner in his own apartment. And when the argument over the Xbox account happened, everything exploded. But the police didn't believe this story. A small argument could make you slash him more than 40 times. David looked straight at the investigator, his eyes blank. I didn't intend to let him live. Just one sentence, but it was enough to confirm everything. He didn't kill in anger. He wanted to kill Christopher. He planned it. And there's one more thing, one that will make us shudder. The final truth will be revealed in the next part. After all the testimonies, the false excuses, the contradictory words, David Hunter finally revealed his true nature. He didn't kill in a panic. He didn't kill because he was forced into a corner. He wanted to kill Christopher. And when asked the final question, the most important question of the entire interrogation, he sent shivers down everyone's spine. Do you regret it? David blinked, then smirked. No. I did what I had to do. A simple answer, but haunting. He had no remorse. He didn't care about Christopher's life. How cold-blooded would a murderer have to be so carefree? Justice has been served, but this case still leaves a big question: what could turn a human into such a heartless monster? Leave your thoughts on this case. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to follow. In the end, after many trials and meaningless excuses, David Hunter was sentenced to life in prison. No chance of freedom. No way back. He chose violence to resolve conflicts, and the price he paid was the rest of his life behind bars. But more painfully, it was a friendship that ended in the worst possible way, one dead, one in prison, and a valuable lesson for all of us. So what can we learn from this case? Backhand index pointing right arguments and conflicts are part of life, but the most important thing is how we control our anger and find solutions. Just 1 minute of losing control, 1 minute of letting hatred overwhelm our reason, can ruin a life. Maybe you have argued with friends, family, or colleagues. But instead of letting your emotions lead you, learn to control yourself, find a more positive solution. Because sometimes, just one wrong choice can lead to irreversible consequences. So what do you think about this case? What was David's real motive? Did he really lose control, or was this a deliberate act? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other interesting stories. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.